Yay! Hi there, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Hey, Judy. Hi, Diane. Shalom, Ruth. Okay, Robert. I think I just saw Antje saying, having a beer. Prost. It's, I'm feeling, I'm feeling very badly that I'm going through one of my no drinking vegetarian phases because it is 25 degrees and sunny outside. And I've spent over 2 hours on my bicycle today. Hi, Cece. And so, hey, Sue. So, this is the sort of day when one should actually be sitting drinking beer on a deck. Good morning, Sandra. It's early down there in Australia. So lovely to have everyone joining on. It's nice to have you here, Martine. So, for those of you who stayed up, that's wonderful. Thank you. It is a gorgeous day. So, it's a little smoky down the valley still, but the wind has shifted. In fact, the wind has shifted to blowing from west to east, hey, Chloe, which is the way it should be going. Hi, Beta. Nice to see everyone. Hey, Mary Beth. Hi there. Mary Beth, it'll be a little hot for you now. It is 25 degrees at Marie. But what happens? I woke up, obviously, this morning, as one does, and I had put this tour up because I had expected to stay in Calgary last night. I actually came home, but my little boy stayed at his nana's house, so that was just lovely. So we had a nice day in the city, and I'm gonna have to show you what Canadian feet look like at the end of winter. So it's not very exciting start to our visit today, but see, I just bought new sandals, and you actually need sunglasses to look at my feet. They're so white. That's where I fell off my bike the other day. But enough of that, everyone. Hey, Ken, nice to see you. Hi, Rita. Hi, everyone who's joining. So we are in Canmore, Alberta. I know some of you have been here with me before on previous. Um, you missed it. Too bad, Martine. You've been here on previous virtual tours on a former platform, but we're here on YouTube Live. I'm thrilled to have you all here. We're looking at the Spring Creek area over here. The reason I mention it is the creek comes from a spring. Spring actually on the other side, but we're in front of Policeman's Creek here. But this is a whole development, and this feels down through here a little bit more like Whistler than it does like a Canadian Rockies town. Did you? Um, but mixed feelings because it's that cookie cutter sort of development. But that said, there's such a desperate shortage of housing here that I have to prefer this sort of dense housing that doesn't spread out through the valley and cut off habitat for the animals. So as a consequence, this sort of dense environment here is a realistic environment. It is a beautiful town, Robert, and I know you know it here. Well, this is what spring. You see, the leaves are out. This is this magic little window, a bit like when I was just in Winnipeg, because there's no bugs out. Obviously, we've had 3 horrendously, unbearably smoky days because of the fires. Poor city of Edmonton up north right now. These are aspen trees, by the way, that are coming out here. These beautiful big trees here, but poor Edmonton is now on a 10 plus air warning. 10 is kind of the worst. Calgary's down to 5. We were this morning in Banff, and Banff is straight down that way, about 20 kilometers, although the national park is only about 6 kilometers from here, the entrance to it. Um, so this morning when I got up, the very first thing I did was look out, and obviously the back door to see what the smoke looked like. That's true, actually. So I look out the back door, and I saw that I could see the top of Sleeping Buffalo Mountain, which made me very, very happy. And so I went out on my road bike, not on my e-bike, and I went out for a good ride. I still feel it. If I sound a little raspy to you, it's because I've been outside for a long time. And then I did another hour on my mountain bike. So this is the kind of weather. And this town here, of course, is Calgary is at 50%, Martine. So the wind is shifted back the way it's pushed it back up north. So, but as we say, I mean, whilst I don't want to be stuck in the heavy smoke here, the city of Edmonton, Greater Edmonton's about 1.2 million people, and it's their spring as well, and they're back into the orange skies. So it's a tragedy there. We are looking around here at the gorgeous mountains. We're looking across to the grassy range across from us there, and of course, famous Hatling Peak. Now, I've told the story so many times, but I haven't told it on YouTube Live. So let me just give you a little bit of context of, first of all, aside from the obvious beauty around us, why Canmore is so fascinating. So first of all, as a land acknowledgement, I am on Treaty 7 territory here, and it is acknowledged within the town hall here now officially. This is the land of the Stoney Nakoda First Nation, the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina people. The Cree passed through, the Métis Treaty 3, the Métis definitely passed through here. I have a story to tell. But the trains arrive here in 1883, and all of the rock. Now, this is the formation of the Canadian Rockies as you know it today. In fact, if I look way down to Pigeon Mountain in the distance, I'm going to give you one little zoom here because it's worth it. So I haven't taken, well, I'm going to try and give you a zoom. Sorry, I feel like I'm accidentally going to put something in the chat. I did, sorry. That's me trying to zoom. Look at the way that mountain is facing. That is pointing from west to east. And so as the North American plate is subducting the Pacific plate, it is thrusting these mountains up. And so they all point from west to east. Well, its older rock is being pushed out and above younger rock. And that's fundamental to this area because at the base of these very old mountains, you're looking at about 380 million years, the age of the rock up around there. Hi, Danny. Nice to see you. Big hugs to you, my friend. So it has compressed down underneath old vegetable matter, and that has become anthracite coal. It's the hottest burning coal. So when the trains arrived here in 1883, these were the coal mines to power the trains through the Rockies. Very, very significant. This was a coal mining town until 1979. The worst accident, I think, was 1917. As you know, coal mining is not a safe sport. Let me get back to that just in a minute. I'm going to keep going because a lot of people on the path. I'm on a boardwalk here, and this is marshland. Now, there's tons of red-winged blackbirds all around out here at the moment. All the migratory birds are coming through. But this kind of marshland and montane land is less than 3% of anywhere in the Canadian Rockies. That's why you don't see a lot of moose here. Although if you're going to see a moose in this area, you're going to go up through the pass in the distance, and we do have a large moose population up there, which is pretty cool. The water's high right now, and it's still flowing. Nice, clean water down through here. So just to sorry, I missed that question. Well, the fires, so CC, we'll do a bit of a Q&A. It's so bright that I'm having a little trouble seeing the screen. The fires are really burning in the north. We are forecasting some rain for Sunday and then rain all day Monday and Tuesday. If that's the case down here, that should protect us extremely well. And that's good news. Up north, what they need is snow, and it's just way too hot. So yes, Antje, I think asked the question, where does it come from? It is, so the main settlers here in the early days, so non-Indigenous people, of course, were always French Canadians because you had such a huge population, what becomes the province of Quebec, and even places like New Brunswick, L'Acadie, but the huge Scottish settlement into Canada, and I do long talks about the Scottish settlement into this country, but all through here, you have the Scots that come in and settle. Of course, the first Prime Minister of Canada, who was really quite an awful person, John A. Macdonald, Scottish born. Well, he's Canadian born, but Scottish family. And the gentleman in charge of building the trains, or in charge of Canadian Pacific, Stephen, his house I've been to many times, Le Mont Stephen in Montreal, but he was from Banffshire in Scotland. So as they settled out here, you have Calgary, which is a Scottish name, claimed or named by Colonel MacLeod, and Banff, of course, where the first president was from, the first president of the train and of the Bank of Montreal. And here, the settlement of Canmore was named as Big Chief. And I'm going to take you up to see the head, or the Big Chief. So More is big, and Can is chief or leader in Scottish Gaelic. It is said today that there is more Scottish Gaelic spoken in Canada, principally Nova Scotia, than there is in all of Scotland. Now, it's still a small percentage. But the big transition of Canmore itself, and we're up by Policeman's Creek because the original police headquarters are just a little ways down the road, and we'll go see them. And then we're going to walk on to make our way to the Bow River today because that's what one has to do in this area. So they come and settle down in this area as a coal mining town. And it was quite a rough coal mining town. Now, to make a very long story short, when the coal mines closed in 79, Canmore, which was surrounded by Banff National Park in the distance, and all of this Kananaskis country. Look at these reflections here. People suddenly from around the world find out that Calgary is going to have the Winter Olympics, and they build the Canmore Nordic Center, the cross-country skiing biathlon here in the town of Canmore. And suddenly, it's the one place in the Canadian Rockies where the land isn't park and people can buy. And it has actually become the most expensive community in all of Canada. I'm not proud of that fact. They say to just get by here, you need to earn $37 an hour. Now, some of these little spindly trees here are the little style of black spruce, and they need the shallowest of the roots in order to live in this whole area, as you would gather, has a very extreme freeze and thaw. It is lovely views, and there's Mount Lady MacDonald. If anyone has ever been on my virtually visiting 360 tours, I did one up there. By the way, I strapped my camera onto my bike and did a downhill run on my mountain bike, and that will be published by Virtually Visiting fairly soon, just as a side note. But we look back over these mountains here, and that huge mountain range right there in the distance, that is Mount Rundle from the eastern, sort of northern, but eastern side. And so Banff is the other side of that mountain. But let's come over, and Antje, because you were wondering, have a look at this. So there is the big head right there. So this lovely statue, and I think actually this is almost worth. Look at that! I can't even. It's so bright out here. Oops, sorry, I'm not trying to do that. I was trying to switch it around. Oh, there we go. It's so bright on the screen, so I'm gonna have to. We'll see. Do we look anything alike? Sorta. I don't know, but there is a lot of information dedicated to that particular statue there. So Canmore transitions, and it's about the transitioning of a community. Sorry, everyone, I don't mean to keep poking you all in the face. I need to get some shade so I can see the controls on the screen here. There we go. There, we're going to go back. There we are. So, Policeman Creek here. This is a hotel behind us called the Drake Fun Pub. All the patios are busy. But come down towards Main Street. So people start moving in here, and athletes start coming in from around the world. And this becomes a major center for training. Now, the Nordic Center is up in the hills in the distance there, and I'll do a tour there on Facebook at some point. What they've done now, because the ski season's ended, they've collected up all the excess snow. They've piled it under wood chips in a shady area, and as soon as we drop below freezing, which is usually about the third week of September, they will lay that snow out again. It's called Frozen Thunder, and it makes it the longest training area for cross-country and biathlon in the world. And so if you mention Canmore in some parts of the world, people haven't heard of it. You say the Canadian Rockies. But if you say it in Sweden and Norway and places like that, they've all heard of it because it's such a huge center for the cross-country skiing and the training. So as a consequence, as a percentage of population, there are more Olympic athletes in this town than any other town in the world. So there's the Northwest Mounted Police, 1893. They established these barracks. You will see the poles of a teepee in the back. So there's a strong connection now, thank goodness, with the Indigenous population, the First Nations through here. A lot of mixing. And Finn, my son, played hockey for years, and there'd always be a few kids on his team speaking Stony, maybe speaking French, good variety. But this was school, prison, jury, judge, the whole thing here back in the day. So if you're a parent here, you come down here for all sorts of events. And so the modern society, sorry, let me just have it, Joan. You've just, doesn't seem that long. Oh, absolutely. This spring has come in so much faster than it normally would. We normally would have, I was watching Pam's beautiful tour at Lake Louise this morning, and last year it was June 6th, if you remember, June 7th that the ice left. Now we're getting very, very busy here, and I don't want to be pejorative to any of my friends from the UK, but this is our most important long weekend in the springtime here, and that is because this is the Victoria Day weekend. It actually means that they still celebrate Queen Victoria's birthday in this country. I just want to show that lovely rainbow flag in there. This is the United Church. So we call it the May 24, which we talked about the other day, Robert, you'll remember. You see a Mountie. Yeah, Mounties are all around. Because that's all the only police we have here. Well, we have Bilo as well. But May 24, which is actually reference to a 24-pack of beer as well. All of these orange ribbons are talking about all the children who disappeared into the residential school system. I do a lot of talks about that. I might do a seated one again to have on YouTube. Isn't this lovely? Embrace diversity. All are welcome here. That's the world I want to live in, and I hope it is yours as well. On the other side of the road is one of the local pub restaurants, and that is the Grizzly Paw. And they brew their own beer here, and their beers have been extremely successful. So that's why I'm staying on this side of the road, because I'm not drinking at the moment. Now look at that cool pop top. I always look at those sort of vehicles, which are fun. So it's an artsy town now. So as it becomes this community with the highest percentage of Olympic athletes in the world, it's not just that. Here's a Brazilian restaurant coming up here. Isn't that gorgeous? Very good food. And but it also is a real arts center. So you have a huge number of published authors. I've written a few books. I wrote my first book when I was living here, which is kind of fun. There's food trucks. That's kind of fun. I don't know this one. Mojo's, I think it's maybe Filipino, which is kind of cool. But here's the main street. Now, both Banff and Canmore, ever since the pandemic, have pedestrianized their main streets. And how cool is that? So we're going to wander down through that, and then we have to make our way up to the river. Now, some of you who've been here many times with me know that there's loops we can do all over. I'm not going to try and squeeze in too much because I just want you to enjoy the spectacular views. Now, this intersection has become really busy with this new system. But just down at the back here is actually where the middle school is. The reason I mentioned that, there's a big park in there, and that is where they have the Folk Festival, which is the second or third biggest in North America, and also the Highland Games, of course. And the Highland Games are a huge amount of fun. The Folk Fest is at the start of August, and the Highland Games are at the end of August, early September, which is, of course, a long weekend, the equivalent of May Day in Europe, the September long weekend here, Labor Day, and that's a blast. Poor people now trying to find parking. It's all paid parking. So I actually parked behind the Drake Hotel and Restaurant because I know some of the staff there, and they're not going to report my car. Um, but parking has become a premium. Now we do have finally a very good system of public transport. It was interesting. Someone actually said that to me the other day when I was in Banff. Said, "Oh, your public transport's great," which historically we would never have said. But isn't this lovely to see this main street? Now, of course, I live in Banff and I love Banff enormously. But one thing I will say about Canmore's Main Street is it's not all hotels, so it's a bit of a different feel. You might remember this bear right here because they were out in Banff for quite a period of time at Bear Street. That's the Carter Ryan Gallery. Now, he is I believe, Dene, First Nations artist. And I just mentioned that, oh, they're just changing all their art in there. They're working away. But part of the reason I always mention him, super nice person, but also, if you arrive into Calgary in the international arrivals, you'll see his art welcoming you. See, so there's art galleries everywhere. Very, very artsy. The mayor, Sean Krause, I think is a lovely man. I've known him for years, and he's the one that made sure they did a land acknowledgement in town hall. And of course, reconciliation isn't just acknowledgement; it's a whole series of steps. But nevertheless, it's a process that we're on. So we are, and I know this will be up on YouTube for a long time, so I just skip past everyone. But for those of you who have been following along, we're in an election here in the province of Alberta. So yesterday, part of the reason I drove home was I was listening to the leaders' debate, and most of us in this community are siding against the current premier. So we'll see how things go from that point of view. But as we make our way further on, there's so many new restaurants here that I don't even know them either. But I do love all the public art here. Isn't this gorgeous to see? Pretty sure I know where that cabin is. Now there is Mount Rundle, right there from the Vermilion Lakes. That's a picture many of you have seen with me. And then some of the beautiful paintings. That one is, was that out? Excuse me, it's blowing in my eyes. Oh, that's Emerald Lake, of course it is. Yeah. Here's the old Canmore Hotel. So obviously the most famous hotel in the whole region is the Banff Springs Hotel, the granddaddy of the Canadian Pacific hotels. This 1890 is actually a protected hotel. Oh, there's Crazy Larry. What's going on, Larry? How are you, buddy? Good to see you. Yeah. And I'm not being rude when I call him Crazy Larry, because that's what he calls himself. Originally from Montreal, and he's out here, and he does balloon art with kids. He is so supportive of the youth community here, and the community is very supportive of him. And a few years ago, he had a death in the family, so we all chipped in and flew him home. Now you'll see a statue there of the miner. Now, since the mine's closed in '79, obviously the community's changed a lot. They still do have a miners' parade, but it's really faded because, well, you can just do the math, right? So, but because I grew up around here, I knew a lot of the old mining families. My family were not. But I have spent a ton of my time up visiting the different mining areas. Now, I still haven't told you the story of that peak, and I might as well tell it to you here. So we're right here in the center of town. but that is Hatling Peak. Now, Hatling Peak was Mr. Hatling. It is said that for every kilometer of train track in the west of Canada, two Chinese workers at least lost their lives. Well, Mr. Hatling was a cook and worked out here and made a bet that he could get up and down that peak in a day. Well, basically, he won the bet. And so then they named it Chinaman's Peak. By the late 90s, and we have a substantial Chinese Canadian population in this valley, they pointed out that you don't name the peak after someone's ethnicity, you name it after the person. And so the name was taken away for several years, and it was the peak formerly known as Chinaman's Peak, and then renamed it Hatling Peak. And I have even done, in fact, if you go onto my YouTube, you might find way back, we'll have to go way back, I'll post it after on our Facebook group, but I have done tours at the top of that mountain, and I will again, trails should be open. Just want to point out the flags in front of the town council here. We all have local government. But the Canmore flag has actually got the rainbow either side of it now, the Pride flag, Canadian, Alberta, and then we have the Treaty 7 flag and the orange flag for Every Child Matters. So I say there is a real attempt here in Canmore, in this valley and in Parks Canada, to acknowledge history honestly and to work towards a process of reconciliation. I'm not actually going to go that way, but if you see all those different names, they'll have them. Even Haling is Taipya in Stony Nakota. So many different names. We had another name change of Mount, I'll have to back up to show it. Mount Pikchi, which means soaring eagle, is up behind me in the distance. Fabulous mountain. It's a much tougher climb. I have climbed it, but it's a much tougher climb. But the former name, the settler name, was so racist that I just don't even feel the need to repeat it. But as I come around here, perhaps, now Cascade Mountain is one of the most iconic views in the Canadian Rockies, but I think indisputably, when you see the Three Sisters come into view up here, this is where you really know you're in the Canadian Rockies specifically. You know, there's mountains all over the world, and I love all mountains around the world. I'm just a mountain person, and I love them. But the Canadian Rockies, if you showed me just a random picture of a mountain from the Andes, the Himalayas, even the Alps, I could get them wrong. I could mistake them. But you'll always recognize the Rockies because of that formation of the thrust faults, either 1, 2, or 3, and they're going from west to east. I'm just coming over and wandering down here in the shade just a little bit so that I can be able to see. Will you be able to reschedule a drumming tour? Maybe, Martine. I need to talk to Skip. They're busy. I will want to try and get out onto the Siksika Nation and take you all for a tour on the reserve. It's unfortunately, so I don't know. I will see if Skip's around to do the drumming. We just had a little window that we were trying to work with. He's got a couple of kids and everything, so I don't know what his summer plans are, but I do want to take you all out to the Siksika Nation, and I know that they'll welcome me and host us there, so I'd love to share that with all of you. Now, that nation is about an hour east of Calgary. Very dry land in there. Interesting land. And of course, the Blackfoot Nation were a hunting nation, so they would have used these valleys to drive the bison in and to hunt them. Over on the right, there's the Bagel Company, and came from the people who it's been sold several times, but they came from Montreal. And you know, there's that great debate: do bagels come from Montreal or do they come from New York? I don't eat a lot of bagels, so I don't really have an opinion. Although, it's a nice coffee shop. Yeah, that coffee culture. Although this time of year we're moving to iced coffee. Maybe you could do a little bit of rafting or float trips in the summer. I do recommend that. And now there's a new Mumbai local, Modern Indian. That's interesting. That's fun. Now this one is classic old Canmore. It's had several names, but it's called the Wood. And you've got the great big decks out back. But of course, a short season to make money off a deck, so it's always risky to own a business. Do you know, it's interesting, it's gone a little quiet right now because everyone will be coming out from the city now that they've heard the air's cleared, and this is a long weekend. So Banff and Canmore will be 100% full this weekend for the May long weekend. And the highway is distinctly busy. Now, it wouldn't be if you come from like Audubon or the M25. Now, there's the bylaw. That's not a mountain coming along. But you might have seen we walked past so many cycle shops. Now this town is much larger as a footprint than Banff is, and that's because Banff is very specifically wedged in to 4.08 square kilometers. Where's Canmore? So down where the three, sorry about the garbage bins, but where the three sisters are in the distance, that's actually where my son's school is. And that's about, I would say 4, I think it's more like 5 kilometers from where I am now. So I don't always like to talk about costs, but the housing market here is among the most expensive in Canada. And people often say, oh, is it more expensive than Toronto and Vancouver? You know, no, in a sense, but the difference is Toronto and Vancouver, which are crazy expensive housing markets, have suburbs that you can go out to that are less expensive. Canmore and Banff do not. So it's the fact that the average house price might be a little bit less than the downtown prices, but but you don't have a low cost option. And so they're always working towards one way or another trying to find solutions. But so much so that businesses often close 1 or 2 days a week because of staffing. So many of you who walked down here with me in the past have seen the tennis courts covered in snow, but look at that, it's not snowing, so they're playing tennis out there. And I actually have a buddy here in town that I do come and play tennis with every now and then. None of us, I shouldn't say none of us, few of us are particularly good here because we don't have indoor tennis courts. So, I mean, it's a short season, you get to play them. Although Canada, particularly Montreal, is producing some really excellent tennis players. So let's walk up this little pathway and then we're going to go and hang out by the river, which is kind of a must do. The river, of course, you've seen it with me in Banff recently. The river is very high. Hélène, bonjour. So the forest fires are still terrible. There's, I want to say 17 campgrounds and I think provincial parks are totally closed in the province. And that matters because this is the long weekend. I mean, everyone goes camping, or goes to the outdoors. Again, they're all to the north of us. To give everyone a sense, so from Canmore to the edge of Calgary is almost exactly 1 hour drive, about 100 kilometers exactly. You go around Calgary, drive north. So it would take, generally speaking, about 4 hours to get to Edmonton. Edmonton is under terrible smoke at the moment. It's the provincial capital. It's a city I like very much. But the fires are not really in on Edmonton, but they're out to the west towards Jasper. So the town of Edson, halfway between Edmonton and Jasper, was evacuated. I mean, tragically. And then to the north, and part of the problem is when we put things in perspective. I often say this one point, but Alberta is twice the size of Germany, right? And so you have fires that are dotted around in so many areas that you can't even focus your energy on it. Oh, there's people down at the beach there, so I'll give them their space. But I have to take you down to the river. Hi, Therese, nice to see you. I'm very, very sorry if I can't, if I haven't seen you come in. It's been so bright here that I have trouble seeing the screen, but now that I'm in the shade, I can see. But you don't need to contact John Wright. There's something else for the newsletter, but it comes from his name. Now have a look. So this whole path down here, this was once upon a time different train lines. There's a train bridge behind me. I've done several tours there in the past, which is just gorgeous. I was almost going to start the tour there, but as this is the very first one, exactly right, Martino. But I was going to start down with Train Bridge, and I just thought, as this is the first YouTube live here in Canmore, I wanted to bring you down the main street of Canmore itself. And of course, I've been busy trying to brand us for years. Do you know I was actually, for a couple of years, the Director of Market Development for Canmore Kananaskis. So I really do have a relationship with this community, and I tried to brand us all Canmorons. It never really took, but I've been trying. But yeah, on Facebook, if you go into the live or live virtually, which I think is a great name, personally, then you can just ask and anyone will put the link in. So here we are very quickly. So I'm still on the north side of the river, and people will jump into the river. Very popular river for kayaking, but it is amazing as you watch the water levels change distinctly. Now, once again, I'm not going to be able to see the screen out here because I've got the sun right on my back, but you'll see people down here in the water. And so many of you will remember that I've walked right out there before in the wintertime. So that's how drastically it changes. I've even done tours. In fact, I have a short one that I put up on YouTube, about 10 minutes when it was about minus, I don't know, 35. But there's this great mixing. And I'm going to show you on the far side because there's water coming out. So the valley up in the distance, right there between the two mountains, you've got Eeyore, east end of Arundel, over on the right, and Howling Peak in the grassy range over on the left. In fact, in case you don't believe me about any of this, you are welcome to take a photo here. And I will try and frame that up as best I can. And you can, sorry, my gimbal, I don't know why it always resets these things. There we are. So there's Canmore's Mountain Vista. And you're looking up into K country. But I just want to talk about this for a moment because through the summer, if you're joining me on trips, I'm going to be doing a lot of that. Y to Y, Yukon to Yellowstone, or Yellowstone to Yukon, the front ranges that go all the way down to that fabulous park. And I know Yellowstone very, very well, and I love it. And I will catch up with our dear friend, Aisha, who is a guide and just an incredible human being down there. I'll be there at least 4 times, if not 5 this year. But it's because all of these front ranges, the animals, the ecosystem is pretty similar because of elevation, because we're so far from the ocean. So there's this natural relationship between all those areas. And so up in the Spray Valley, there's water that's flowing out of a reservoir and it's coming down to a power station. And I can see the power station just in the distance. Look at the difference of colors just down here in the two waters. So the Bow River, of course, is all the snow melt and glacial melt. Whereas up there is just the flow because there's a dam up in the distance. So have a look at that water change. Now, I want to give you this view now because when I get on the bridge, I cross the bridge on the other side, the pedestrian bridge at the far side. So in the distance, you're looking right out to Cascade Mountain. And so I drive straight to Cascade and I hang a left and I'm home in Banff. And great big Rundle. That's one continuous massif there, one big chain of mountains. And it's about 16.5 kilometers long. And it's just spectacular, everyone. And then this grassy range up here is kind of our playground if you're local here. So I have stood on, I guess probably all the main peaks up there, which is pretty fun. And because we're in High River, no risk of floods because we didn't have enough snow this winter. But you'll see that the low underpass has just closed down here. But I've seen it way higher, so there's not going to be a flooding risk this year unless, well, don't quote me on that because, given all this extreme weather, who knows if we're suddenly going to get 2 weeks straight of extreme rain or something. But generally, whenever we've had flooding events, it's because the snow has not melted off yet. So that's really what changes the factor of it. But I want to cross over and take you out to see, I think, some of the most iconic images anywhere in the Rockies. Now, I have chopped this town up. I can do I'd say about 12 distinct tours. By the way, that's who I'm supporting in the provincial election. That should be our next premier if I can control it. Rachel Notley's the leader of the Alberta New Democratic Party. And a good person, for what it's worth. But I do want to talk about the watershed because I was just talking about the Bow River coming down and carrying so much with it. It gives you a sense of the river starting up at Bow Lake. If Sandra's still here, she was at Bow Lake with me down to Hector Lake and then Lake Louise down through Banff, Canmore, Cochrane, through Calgary, and then carries on. It meets up with the Old Man River and then the Red Deer, comes the South Saskatchewan, and carries on all the way to Lake Winnipeg and out the Nelson into the Hudson's Bay. So this water is flowing to the Atlantic Ocean, even though we're in the far west of the continent. How cool is that, everyone? And I talk about how cool something is. This water is still very, very cool. Some of you have stood here with me before when you've been able to see right through. Not going to see through at the moment, and there's a big log jam, but I just want to give you this, of course, iconic photo. Sandra, you'll be coming back. You're going to move here. I've already got you a job. But there it splits around that island out there. You see all the dead wood that drifts up? So on the left side, in the winter, that will actually drop right down to zero, and the main channel's to the right. But to give you a sense of what erosion looks like, look, that tree has just made its way here. And now the water will stay high for the next few weeks, and then it'll drop. That might be there unless unless town comes with a chainsaw and chops it up or something, which is a fine thing to do, by the way. because then it just moves out into the rest of the system. But isn't that a fabulous view? I mean, it's just so beautiful. And on days like today, this big crane here is to get rafts out of the water. I wonder if they could use it to move that big tree, because it's just gotten grounded. But it is amazing to think that high water will wash these trees out. Now, sometimes I wander down in this direction, take you down um, to see where the beavers have been. But I think we'll go the other way and just see the changing of the waters because it's so gorgeous. Here is a silver birch tree. Now, they don't really occur around here because we're just too high up. So they're mostly aspen, but a few of them get planted. These are community flower gardens. So next time I come here, sometime this summer, and I'm here a lot. In fact, I have some tourists staying in Canmore this year, which is fun. So that gives you a sense of all of the different ones. The prairie crocus is already out. I was showing some the other day. The wild rose is not out yet. The brown-eyed Susans are not out yet, but they'll all start to pop out. Again, I wouldn't be counting on flowers this early normally, but we have had. Now, I mean, of course, when I have a few days off at home, who doesn't love beautiful, sunny, clear weather? There's just a factor of this where one has to be smart. So let's just cut across here. And I want to head down. I know we're kind of, well, we never have a set time, but I always aim on these to aim for at least a half hour. I know we've gone over, but it's just such a perfect day. And I want to come and show you the different colors of the water here. So nice to have such a large group joining today. I did want to say, by the way, it was quite a while ago that we crossed that kind of important 4,000 hours of watch time. So thank you so much for participating with me. So I'm pretty close to retiring. But at some point there's going to be, I mean, I can do a membership thing. I'm not going to bother with that until I learn more about it. But anyway, have we just cut out? Sorry, are we buffering? Let me see. Oh, I think we just, I think we're back, everyone. Yay! Oh, I have no idea why it buffered, but there we go. But lovely to have you back. I was just actually giving you the winning lottery numbers. Unfortunately, I've forgotten them now. So it was actually, we're back. Yay. You're very welcome for the beautiful walk. Look at these colors of water. Isn't this just spectacular down here? Now, if you're wondering how cold this water is, seems appropriate, I demonstrate that to you. So now I've got my new sandals on, and these are the exact same brand as my old sandals because they're made to walk in water. Not on, right? So they're not, Jesus sandals, but if I have a little seat right here on the, look at that, hey? Haha. Oh, is Oscar here? Oscar, hola, amigo. Hola, Oscar. Hey, everyone. For those, did they have some trouble? This is my friend Oscar from Oaxaca in Mexico. I will be back there next year, of course, because it's Oscar, and he does cooking classes with us. Oscar, mira, es el verano aquí. Bueno, demasiado temprano, pero un gusto verte. Oye, necesito hacer unos tours acá en YouTube en español. So we'll definitely do. Oscar and I, every time we've been in Mexico there, we've done at least one tour in Spanish. And Oscar, your Spanish is really coming along. For those who don't know, my friend Oscar has Casa Crespo in Oaxaca. He'll be very modest, but he's actually quite a well-known chef. And he takes people on cooking classes. Es hermoso, eh? So 2 water systems, one from the Spray Valley coming down here. See, Mary Beth Oscar was with you just before the pandemic. And I actually thought you were going to move in together, but she flew away. Have a look down at this water. Isn't it just gorgeous? Isn't that right, yeah. Well, sometimes it's good to get your foot ahead. So there's up there at Grotto Mountain and Quarry. And then you're looking over at Mount Lady Macdonald, the second wife of the first Prime Minister of Canada. And then that gorgeous mountain with the peak up there is Mount Peakchi, which means soaring eagle. And for those of you who are bird people, you either know these birds well, or if you're from the Midwest in the US, you don't know them at all. Those are magpies. They're sort of like pigeons in Alberta, but they are incredibly intelligent birds, and they stay all winter. So that's and just to show you a little bit more about the river over here. We say it is a living river. It is indeed a living river. So the osprey are back. The bull trout is the one we're really trying to protect. It's a native fish. It's not a trout at all. It's a dolly varden. So, uh, so Joanne, great question. Yes, we do have. Most years we'll have snow year round. This year it looks like it might not. Now it has happened in my life that we've seen the mountains by August without snow on them, but generally, sorry, I didn't see. Oh, Sarah, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't see it. It was so bright. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out, Sarah. It's much appreciated. Lovely to see you here. But yes, so generally speaking, up on Cascade there'll be snow, and then Mount Bourgeot. So yes, you see snow year round, and of course it's only well, from here in Canmore it's about a 55-minute drive to see your first glacier. Whereas in Lake Louise, of course, there's glacial ice the whole time. So I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I think what we'll do is probably call it a day. I know a few people left when we had the buffering issues, which so be it, but it's so nice to have you all here. Oh, there's Casey. Hi there. It's so nice to have you all joining. It was nice to have a big group. So I obviously just appreciate so much doing this with all of you. For those who can, it is extremely appreciated if you make donations. Finn and I were just about to publish a Patreon thing, but now we're just looking at all the other options because there's so many options on the table. If you could sit here all day, Sandra, and I keep watching for fish too. The fish actually sit right down here. I won't bother switching the camera again, but they'll sit right in the murky water, so it's a little bit harder for the other for the birds that swoop around to see them. So that marsh we started at the beginning of our visit today, every now and then a fish will make its way up there, and then you'll see an osprey, and the fish will be gone. So, and there's an island, large island out in the distance here, tons of wildlife out there. But if you are able to go on, I know the links there. I know it's a bit of a hassle, but it's much appreciated if you can make donations. Some people choose to do it sort of every few tours or whatever, but it's just nice and hey, we've got quite a few followers on this page, but if we can keep spreading it, and of course I'm always thrilled to promote other guides and friends. Hey Jeff, see, didn't see you there either, pal. So it's much appreciated. All that noted, we are going to go in a minute. I'm just going to switch this around. So first of all, I'd like to say peace and love from my beautiful mountain. Hi, Dolores. Yeah, so you put on notifications. I do try to get them up on the guide's calendar. Um, I, they do go up on the calendar on my website, but I am sorry. I mean, that's one of the challenges, of course, because just the nature of the beast with the fact that Hago closed down. On the upside, if people make a donation directly to me or any other guide through the Buy Me a Coffee or whatever, the good news is that aside from the PayPal fees, which are a bit, they add up, but we get so much more of the money. So but yes, the notifications help. I talked someone through those the other day. Not that I'm an expert, but I'm just going to switch around so you can keep looking out here because it's just so beautiful, these views looking across the Fairholme Range and the textures of the water. But as we're here, I do want to warn everyone, when I turn off the stream, it cuts off the chat. So it means that really when we end extremely quickly. But every now and then I always like to leave you with something to hang on for the next time. And so interestingly enough, one time I was down here as quite a young person. I don't know if you know anything about mermaids. Well, this was kind of like a mermaid, I believe. And she was